Welcome back, travelers, to Legendary Lore, where today we're going to be going over the Cabaretti, which are pretty cool. I love the Cabaretti as a design, and especially after seeing how Joe's deck has been transformed. He has a token deck that's just full-on Cabaretti now. It's a ton of fun to see. But yeah, Cabaretti, and just like the other ones that were originally other classes that essentially evolved into these groups, we have the Cabaretti, which are basically druids and bards. These are the party people. These are the ones that own the nightclubs and that have all the stuff they need to keep everybody else paying attention to them and away from their shadier deals. So basically the Cabaretti, they own all the dance halls, the concert venues, the restaurants, all the stuff like that. And so that's their deal. That's their entire shtick. And it's actually Jetmir I find to be the most interesting as far as why he's the leader. Because the other ones, they had little bits to them. Like Rafine had this idea that she was supposed to be for something great. And Falco was just really clever. Xander had the most money out of the aristocrats that was left around, and he was desperate because he was quickly dwindling in power. And then you had the Ziatora, who's just a giant dragon. So those all have their specific things. One wants power, another one wants purpose, another one wants to regain lost power. But then we have Jetmir. Jetmir is basically he's this selfish druid, this bard that was trash at his job, and he was just like a middling character. He didn't really have anything useful to him. And so out of all of them, he just feels like this guy who's pretending the entire time. And it even says that he lets everybody in. He just wants to have parties all the time, and everybody's like, oh, it's Jetmir. Jetmir's so cool. But that's because they don't actually know that Jetmir was just really bad at his job originally and didn't know how to keep it to himself. So then they basically live in Mezio and the Park Heights once again, because that's where the high life is. That's the fanciness. And the main thing that they have is the Vantolion. And the Vantolion is basically where they have their entertainment, and they have the thing called the Rose Room, which is the most exclusive kind of thing that they only the best can go into, and it's Jetmir's place. And that's basically how they're set up. Now, legends wise, they have a few interesting legends. Kit Canto, of course, we've already talked about her, how she started off in the slums, and now she's one of the most foremost impressive singers that he's got at his disposal. We've got Jenny Faye, who was adopted by Jetmir, and she is basically she loves animals, and so that's why she's terrible deals making tokens, because she just loves having so many exotic creatures around her, and I guess in her case, dogs and cats. But Jenny Faye is just brutal as well, and that's part of Jetmir's raising. He loves her. And speaking of love, we have Fabien. Fabien is just this random legend, the boss's confidant. We don't know anything else, really. There's basically nothing on her. It's very little to go off of. Just the fact that she is definitely very closely associated with Jetmir and also happens to be a cat. And she's an advisor, so there's all that. From there, we get into the more interesting characters, in my opinion. We get to Rocco! And Rocco is basically this legendary chef. And just the idea of there being among all these different assassins and musicians and everything, we have a chef, and he's like a top chef too. He's the Cabaretti caterer, so he's the guy for the big events. And so basically he has there's a culinary empire essentially, and he is the master of the kitchen. He's basically the Gordon Ramsay of the Capenna world. And so as that happens, he just becomes more and more inspired by different kinds of things. You actually get to see him for a very small amount of time, but you do see that he's basically a master of his craft. That leads us to Bess. And Bess is interesting because she was working under Rocco. She calls herself the soul nourisher. She's also a chef. And what's interesting is that because she was working under him, she eventually left that group, because she did not want to only serve the rich and the famous, because they would basically be like, I want this, and they'd be like, this exactly, and so they'd make it. But she was very creative, and she was able to make really high level cuisine with very cheap ingredients, and she was really, really clever with everything. And so she decided that she was going to go back down basically to the Mezio area, and she was just going to be feeding those that were less fortunate, which is really cool to me, that they just randomly have this person who opens up a soup kitchen essentially, and she's able to make these like the little creatures that come in, little ones, they get stronger because of it. She herself is just a citizen. She doesn't have anything like really extra added to her. That's just who she is, essentially, which I thought was a really nice touch, because Rocco's a druid, so it's her focus is on that. Then we got Benny Brax, and his whole deal is that he's basically a pigeon keeper, or at least he was. He started off as a bird keeper, and he got really good at like breeding the birds and making them look more and more crazy and extravagant. And eventually Jenny Faye saw that, and she was like, "Oh, you're going to give me a lot of animals." And so basically, because of her seeing him and giving this great review for like what he did, he suddenly gets this huge like boost. He's known as the zoologist. He's not actually Cabaretti, but his story is so deeply tied to theirs that that's why I included him. In a similar vein, we have Giada. Giada's always hanging out with Ginny. We don't really know why she's always hanging out, but she's not even a Cabaretti individual. We don't know what's the deal there, but there's something going on. Besides all that, those are the 8 legends that we have to go over. Obviously, again, we already went over Jetmir and how he's a pretender to the throne. But yeah, those are the characters for the Cabaretti, which is probably the second best out of the groups. Yeah, I'd say second best. Maestros definitely still take the top spot because they have all the art and lore. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys again in the next episode. Until next time, travel well.